Good evening, everyone. The Ranter is back to go into yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. And this is going to be the part 2 of my degeneration of politics. Earlier today I did the part 1, which was focused on the Democrats, where I went through what I considered to be things that I addressed and dissected of the malfunctions of the Democratic Party, especially coming up to the upcoming midterm. And so now we're going to go from the Democrats to the Republicans. And I did this thing on my on the Facebook group that I'm a part of, Middle America, where I essentially asked the question, because there's many members of this political group that are Republican and conservative, and probably wouldn't mind if the Republicans took over in the midterms or in 2 years had a Republican in the White House. And I asked a pretty serious question upon, if this happened to turn out the way you wanted, what type of policies do you want to come out of this with the success of the Republicans in charge? Anything that you want to see advanced? Anything you want to see rolled back? Because I was pretty curious. And so far, after 3 days, there was no answer. Which is, I don't know if that's telling, if that is something I should assume a reason, but it does give me theories as to the seriousness of how people are in concerns with this. What I see with the Republicans in this current incarnation, heading toward the midterms, like pretty much the way I couched it with the Democrats, I see that, as I mentioned in the last video, they do have the benefit of keeping their party in lockstep. Now, much like the Democrats, Republicans are not really unified into one monolithic thing here, where you have establishment Republicans who have their own set of values and so forth, but they want to keep it in the realm of, responsible, logical, governmental function here. And then you got the people on the far right who had an example that you can say anything you want without there being any consequences, and are a little bit more fiery, and they're a little bit more dramatic and drawing the attention, but not really doing the work. So there's that, and there's that. But how are the difference between, say, the establishment and this far right, and the Democratic establishment and its progressive left wing or far left, depending upon your point of view of it, is that regardless of the differences, the Republicans stick to the message. They stick unified. If there is any disagreements publicly between them, they're kept. The majority of any disagreements are kept outside of view. Anything that is actually public, that is problematic, then Republicans themselves cut them off at the knee. We've seen that when it comes to Madison, who happened to have lost his primary bid, so he's essentially out after the election. And we are kind of seeing it in a little rumored little infighting among certain members of Congress who were a little bit more too fiery or too dramatic or too reckless, probably the best term for this. That there are rumors that some political PACs, at the behest of other people, are running ads and running smear campaigns on these members of their own party. But as far as the official message goes, it's all focused all right here. And as I mentioned in the last video, the Republicans have the strategy and the will to think long term, to know that if they cannot accomplish their goals right now, they will build up, and they'll do what they can methodically over a stretch of time to make it happen. to set all the dominoes in the row before they knock it over, instead of just setting up one domino and knocking, oh, that's enough. They don't do that. But the thing about it is that, from my vantage point of Republican politics and the Republican Party, or at least this fringe right wing, which I no longer believe is fringe anymore towards its party. People will point to Donald Trump as to being the reason or the cause to that. As much as I am a critic of Donald Trump, as the dozen or used to know of me, he is not the cause. He is a symptom. But this downward slope of our political discourse has been coming on for a long while. You can look no farther back if you want to the time of Barack Obama's presidency and see what was really acceptable to be said in front of these politicians who did not so hurriedly shush them or correct them. But you did have that happen, that there were some responsible people that did want to make sure that the message was solid, that, you didn't fly into these personal attacks or conspiracy theories back then. I mean, no greater example of that is with John McCain, who corrected the woman who said that she didn't trust Obama because he was an Arab, and he said no, he's a good man, he's a good family man. I just happen to have disagreements with him, and that's why he's running for president. But he's not a bad man. We no longer have that in the Republican Party, unfortunately, and it looks like the establishment Republicans, the Mitch McConnells, that are trying to hold on, who still have a stranglehold over their caucus, still will put their shoulders in, and then they will continue to do the work while everyone else is flaming around them. They're still trying to keep focus to the path. But here's the thing, and here's what is actually the danger in this. One of the major issues that, when it comes back to Donald Trump as being a symptom of this, what he himself causes as a symptom that is now filtered down to all these other people since his presidency has come and gone, was that there is no longer those John McCain moments. There is no longer somebody who is responsible with the messaging, with steering the people that they want to vote for them, to correct them when they need to be corrected, if they get something wrong from their point of view. What you have seen in past years, where you can call out politicians who were just who pandered in veiled terms, will speak in code that will agree with you but not really agree with you if you go too far afield of what you think, and it'll be something along the lines of, well, there's something wrong in this country, it's called Muslims, and the guy would be going, well, yeah, we'll look into that. Okay, that's not good. No. Now, since you had President Trump come and gone, who always spoke reckless, who, what was ever accused of him, he accuses his opponents of, whose fan base was vastly entertained by him, and because of his success as becoming president, taught the very sad lesson that you can say whatever you want without consequence. Or at least he can. I suppose people are living vicariously off of that premise that he could say some pretty outlandish shit without any hint of any facts and just get away with it. Well, if he can do that, why can't I? So that you get an example of this, just look or so about a week or so back and check out the debates for the Arizona gubernatorial, the debates for the Michigan, the congressional debate in Wyoming, all Republican, and see not only the strained loyalty oaths to Donald Trump they were doing, and in declaring that they all believe that Biden was not legitimately a president, that the election was stolen, and when they turn on each other in these debates, one of them called another's campaign, "Oh, your campaign is a psyops." Okay. This is what happens when you don't have somebody who was responsible, that will just say yes to whatever you had said, no matter how far flung afield it was, no matter how far that conspiracy theory goes. Because they dealt in conspiracy theories, they not only fed you the spoon of the conspiracy theories, they ate from your own spoon with the stuff that you own thought up because that was acceptable to him at the time, because that gives him the benefit. And I'm talking about Trump here. You fan the flames of conspiracy theory enough, then you get a gunman going into a pizzeria because they think it's full of child molesters. You piss people off, saying that the vote was fraud, that the election was stolen, and you're making money off the concept of the election being stolen. And these people are all buying into it, as we have seen from these January 6th committee hearings. How from December 18th to 19th, that was when it decided to tweet on that we were to everybody meet on January 6th because it's going to be wild. And all the planning that we have seen evidence of what was going to happen. That's what happens when you don't have a responsible person at the helm to tell you no. First of all, no one told this guy no, so how could he tell anybody no? And if, as long as everyone is, happy with him and supportive of him, he'll lie to him right to his face, and he'll back whatever bullshit that you just thought up in your own imagination. And we'll go, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we'll go into that. Yeah, totally, that totally happened. I mean, it's the same mentality that gets people to vandalize their own property or burn their own property and blame it on Biden supporters or Black Lives Matter or whatever bullshit, just to draw attention when it's them themselves that did it. So what we in the recent events that we've had, the unfortunate shootings that we saw on July 4th in Chicago and in Philadelphia, but Chicago and specifically, Republican politicians and news pundits from, say, like Fox News, was very quick to use the shootings to push their own shit. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who apparently has a podcast now because Lord knows she doesn't do any work in Congress, she was lamenting over the shooting because that was an inside job to push gun control and to ruin MAGA month. Tucker Carlson, on his show, postulated that, if it wasn't for women being involved in the background checks for these people to get guns, what the fuck? Alright, so it was an inside job and women made you do it. Okay. Just okay. We have the most recent thing to talk about, which I was really wanting to do the discussion about because it is, quite frankly, disgusting. And how it became national news is frankly disgusting. And I'm gonna do the cliche both side blame here, but there is a little bit of there's a little bit of a level thing when it comes to this. Because everyone takes political advantage when they find them, especially those who are desperate. And the 10-year-old girl who got raped in Ohio, who had to go to Indiana to get an abortion. I am not going to get into whether she should have done that or not. We're not going to have that fucking discussion. That's for another day, another time. That is not the point of this. The point is when it became a political football. You know, on one side, for the Democratic side of this issue, is it unseemly to use it as a political point? Yes. Yes, it is. But, had they not, with this girl had gone and been raped, gotten her abortion in Indiana, we not know about it. Nationally, we not know about it. And perhaps the rapist would have gotten away with it if there wasn't so much attention. But Democrats did make a football out of this. Biden, when there was only one source of the story, brought it up in his proclamation about abortion. And when I first heard about this, and when we first heard about this story, and I heard of it from that was only one source, and there was doubt on her existence of this, I got pissed at the Biden people for having them go on air with just one source of a story. That's so fucking irresponsible. Then it gets a little bit more horrible because on the Republican fucking side of this is the outward need to deny it happened. Now, don't get it wrong. When there's a one source story, the believability of it does get skewed. Because you don't know if it's really legit or not, especially in this day and age of disinformation. But the Republicans were tripping over them, and I'm talking about pundits and congressmen, and the AG of Ohio, by the way, who didn't hear a whisper of it. Didn't hear a fucking whisper of it. Went out of their way to not only say the story didn't exist, and then blame Biden somewhat for it, even though the story didn't exist. Fox News ran with that. Jim Jordan tweeted about it, that, it's another lie. And then they caught the rapist and he confessed to it. And then Jim Jordan's tweet disappeared. And then when Fox News had to kind of reveal that this was a real thing, was there a mea culpa? Was there a, we got this kind of wrong? Nope, there wasn't. Nope, it became this convoluted thing where they went after the initial doctor that first brought this to light because she was an abortionist in her agenda. Said the whole thing was murky even though the guy confessed, so that's not really all that murky. Brought up the time frame as if the time frame of her rape and abortion was coinciding a little too close to the law. Fuck you. blamed it on the rapist, which they should because he's a rapist. But no. He was an undocumented illegal immigrant. So let's get that inserted into there for your scare job. And then, even though it's all murky and no one knew what was going on, oh, it was all Biden. So what? Biden sent an undocumented illegal alien to rape a 10-year-old to force her to have an abortion for kicks, for political points. This is what these people do. And you can say Democrats do it too. Not to this degree. Not to this degree at all. And don't think that this is an isolated incident. When we heard about the Uvalde shooting at the elementary school, what was the first thing we heard from a politician? We won't even name him. That he was undocumented, he was a liberal, he was transgendered. Because transgender is now this year's boogeyman, or boogie woman, depending, So, they threw that irresponsible bullshit out. And I didn't hear any mea culpas off of that either. Ooh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. None of that shit, did we? Don't talk to me upon one side or another side, making something into a political football, because everyone is fucking playing political football now, aren't they? It's just a matter of degree, isn't it? But again, this is what happens when you don't have anybody responsible that is at the helm, that is trying to be there to explain to the voters what are going on. They're not explaining anything to the voters. The voters are throwing stuff at them, and they're going, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're totally right. You're such a genius. Vote for me. I don't want to get too much into, like, say, the January 6th stuff when it comes to this particular topic. Other than it is a culmination, of what happens when you let conspiracy theories, irresponsible thinking, run amok, where somebody is banking on you being incited so you can do what he wants you to do without him directly telling you what to do. Some people wants to be that pissed off. They just do. There's a thrill in being that pissed off. There's a blood rush when you have righteous indignation and then someone points a finger and says, there is the cause for your lot in life not being as good. We do it every election cycle when Republicans from Trump on down will go after and say the other out there. The other out there that's not you. Yeah, they're coming. It could be a migrant caravan. It could be transgender folk going to the bathroom. It could be Black Lives Matter. It could be critical race theory be taught in grade school when it's a fucking graduate school level training that is done in law school. But you hear it. You hear the conspiracy theory of it. Woo! So little breadcrumbs of what we want to do with the education system. We first say that they're teaching critical race theory, so we better look into that. And then we go, oh, if that's happening, we better go and look in the library. And then we look into the books and, sexually explicit stuff, which may or may not actually be sexually explicit. It may actually have an age cap to it. And then it may actually be something along the lines of treating people of different sexual orientations with a little bit of tolerance and fucking human respect. Oh. And then all of a sudden, we start throwing out the bullshit conspiracy theories of sexual education being so explicit and graphic. When majority of the time, that's not the case. I mean, back when I was in school, which was literally another century ago, the sexual education was all pretty stale. It was all about the sexual mechanics, not the act, not anything pleasure or any of that bullshit. Just what goes what, and what happens, and how a baby is conceived, and so forth. Ooh, porn. So they go after that, and then they go, wow, if they're teaching that in school, then these teachers must be groomers. They're grooming these children to be tolerant of LGBTQ people, of transgender, to make them not hate them instantly as soon as they see them. So they must be grooming them for some insidious and infernal reasons. So we better control education now and make sure they only do what we want them to do. Because Lord knows we wouldn't want you, like, learning math from math books in Florida. Train A is leave the station in San Francisco. How many miles? Nope. It's coming from San Francisco. Nope. Burn the book. Obviously a liberal train. The problem that I see with this downward slope from this aspect of the Republican Party, in that there's no one that wants to be responsible because of the way things are. So conspiracy theories just fly out the window and we are just bathed in tinfoil over it. Is that we have nobody responsible to say no. And it gets steadily worse. And after this generation comes and goes, and the Republicans more than likely will take over in the midterms, off the successes of this criminally conspiracy theory nonsense, this shit is not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. Because it's apparently successful. Which means no one really wants to be adults anymore. Remember the Reagan era concept, the Cold War concept of trust but verify? They don't want you to verify anymore. They don't want you to prove anything anymore. They don't want you to come, whatever you say, come with some facts behind it. Just say it. That's enough. Just say it. That's enough. This is a lesson that Trump has taught people. From his, going back to his perfect call with Zelensky, where in the midst of all his trying to push for him to do an investigation on Hunter Biden, in the midst of that he says, just say you're going to investigate him. You don't have to investigate, but just say that you will. Weird. Because when he was trying to push the Georgian election committee after the election to find those votes, in order to overturn the election results, and he was browbeating them to do it, he also then said, just say there was an election fraud. Just say it. Just say it. It's fine, because then me and the Republican Congress will take it from there. Just say it. You don't have to prove it. Just say it. Because if there's any benefit, if there's any positive in a world, of any positive things that Trump is good at, as somebody who through his real estate, through the New York media, through reality TV, and through his presidency, he is a savant king of perception. You don't have to prove a thing. He never had to prove a thing. He just had to say it. And that was enough. You know, say it in a manner that people will bob their heads and agree. And then they will add their own flavor to what he says, and then they say it back to him. He says, yeah, you're right. You're right. I never thought it. You're such a genius. Such a genius for agreeing with me. And since you're agreeing with me, you're adding credence to whatever I say, even though I'm saying flat-out bullshit, but since you're agreeing with me, obviously it has to be true, because we're both geniuses. Stable geniuses. Now, here's the thing, though. From what I see of Republican voters, there are those who just want to be out there to own the libs, and this is all funny. It's all funny. They'll take over the power, and then liberals will be crying, and oh, it's too bad. That's all fun. Hey, fun. And then there were actually serious, good people who were Republicans, or fiscally conservative, maybe socially conservative, people that have points of view that I disagree with, but nonetheless understand that are still good people, and we just disagree, that may be pro-life, that may have issues with LGBTQ people, but they're not going out of their way to demonize people, to demonize facilities like clinics and so forth. They're not out there that is, you know, calling gay folk deviants or trans folks deviant. They may believe one way, but they do have the restraint in them just to go, shh, it's fine. It's fine. You know, and that can be cool, because in those type of ways we can still find common ground. You don't have to agree on everything, but you know, there's some things that we can agree on. That's cool. But these type of voters used to want responsible people, because it used to be that whoever you voted for is a reflection of your vote, a reflection of your choice. So if you were voting, you don't want the person you're voting to be an unqualified, disqualified piece of shit. You're trying to find the positives of the person that you're voting for, even if it's Donald Trump. And then you go, and those are not saying, oh, I'm going to vote for him because he's saying what I'm thinking. No, I'm talking about those people who just go, I don't really want to vote for Hillary. I wanted to vote for any other Republican, but apparently all of them were too busy trying to hug Trump because they wanted his voting base. I'm kind of stuck, so I'm going to have to vote for Trump. So I'm going to hope that since he is such a X factor, that maybe that's going to help out the country somehow. That maybe his genius of his own brilliance of being a billionaire, or in reality a millionaire, that will translate somehow into the economy. I'll hope that. And then cast a vote for him, and then see what happens later. And let the people who are happy at the chaos be happy with him. But these people are just like, every time something happens, don't ask me about him, please. I was just doing. It's no longer like that anymore. It's no longer that people care that your vote is being representative. I mean, those of us who had to swallow our pride and disgust in voting for Joe Biden, only because the other side was Trump, over that we had 3 or 4 different options that we were preferring over Biden. I mean, we get to hear, oh, well, you know, you voted for him, but, you know, he did the busing thing in the 70s, and he did the crime bill. He was a racist, so therefore, tantamount, ipso facto. Well, that's not really the case. You just vote for who was in front of you, unfortunately. And in reality, you don't really want to You don't really want to go down the rabbit hole of, questioning the motivations of why a voter votes the way they do. There are good people that voted for Biden. There are good people that voted for Trump. For good reasons. They don't have to be you don't have to agree with the reasons to recognize from their point of view that was a good reason for them. But what's the good reason for voting for someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who starts out her congressional career trying to antagonize the Democrat across the across the hallway, who has like a trans child, and says, "Oh, trans people don't exist." How do you deal with, how do you square the circle of, dealing with people who are your representatives, who whenever they talk on these news shows, they try to justify the most vile and horrible things. All because they're defending their politics. And it's worse than the pandering like Democrats would do, like say on Black History Month. Because that is cheesy. That is a little shade of pathetic when you think about it. But that is not going to actively hurt anybody. And one of the other things that comes to the problems with the Republican Party, or problems with Republican representatives, or the pundits that speaks for them on Fox News or OAN or whatever the fuck, is that since there's lack of responsibility, not giving a shit of what you say. Oh, well, I'll say whatever I want on my show because our lawyers will take care of that. Blanket. The people who are in this mob mentality are hearing this, and they are seeing no consequence of any actions being done against these people who say these things that it potentially hurt somebody. And then you get one or two of these people who are listening to this, absorbs this bullshit, goes out against a gun, and goes out and be a MAGA warrior for the cause against the invaders, or the perverts, or the other. Roe v. Wade goes down, Trump rally, the Congress lady who won her primary said it was a victory for white life. Anyone else would flinch on that stage when they heard that. In any other era. No flinching. Everyone was cheering. People will say, you're getting a little hyperbolic on someone claiming that somebody is like a Nazi or whatever, because that's just too far. You're just being dramatic. Well, when then people act like it, what are we supposed to say? Well, I'm just worried about white life. This is a victory for white life. How are we supposed to interpret that? I mean, you're feeding this to your people, your voters, your supporters like kibble. And they're going to take this information not only to the voting booth, not to the sites where they give you donated money, but they're going to run with this. Because no one says no to a conspiracy theory now. No one says no to the most outlandish thing now. And it's just going to get worse. Because we have to top ourselves. In our decline and decadence as a republic, as the ending of our country is actually kind of a little visible on the horizon. It doesn't have to be this election cycle. It doesn't have to be the next election cycle. It could be 10 years, 20 years down the line. If we're continuing down the way that we're going down without a course correction, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Maybe it won't be the single lone wolf with a gun, or a handful of separate lone wolves with a gun that was inspired in their little manifestos. Maybe down the line there'll be more and more and more, all inspired by this political rhetoric without consequence, reckless, without care, that gets people killed. And then you can blame it on mental illness, but then you still want to make sure the mentally ill still is able to access to guns. So there's a nice little catch-22 there. So, to try to summarize the differences in the two parties, is that the Democrats have a problem with their messaging. And they really do, because if people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, or any of these people can say the shit that they do, either on their podcasts, since they obviously don't really have a job in Congress, or on the news channels, blaming tragedies over things that they demonize in politics. If that flies, if they garner success in that, then there's something wrong with the Democrats, who should not be on their back foot against such rhetoric. That they should be like, well, we're the responsible people here. We're going to treat you like adults. We're going to tell you as much of the truth as politically possible, but we're not going to snow you to the point where we're going to cater to every conspiracy theory that's running in your head. We're going to bring you back down to reality. We will let you know as much as we can. Again, politics. We'll let you know what the rights and wrongs are. We'll try not to make you hate the other side. Is what Democrats should be doing. But again, on the Democratic side, there's a problem with messaging, and there's a problem with being too reactionary as opposed to offering up more than just being opposed to the other side. Republicans, on the other hand, little to no responsibility at the top to clamp down and to deny conspiracy theories, to deny and to stop people from hating people. Where is it that you no longer can simply disagree with somebody on policy, but they actually have to be demonic and be the enemy? Anything going on in anybody else's life, oh, that's their fault. They're doing that to you. Be it Trump, or any of these politicians, or any of these nighttime news bullshit artists on their entertainment show, because the court says it's not a news show, and they said that in their own documents. They constantly put barrels of gasoline around pyromaniacs. It's maybe 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000. But all the people were bobbing their heads, and we're all happy about going to January 6th. Sure, there was a handful of people who were around those barrels of oil, metaphorically speaking, and was flicking a lighter. The sad part is they want them to flick the lighter. And the one thing I'll say on this January 6th thing, on this, because I'll do other videos on that. It's funny how many congressmen were quickly asking for pardons. Didn't do anything wrong, why do you need a pardon? How many people wanted that to succeed? How many people who maybe even realized that Trump did not win the election, but because he had such a rabid fan base, people loyal enough to go and riot for him, and maybe, just maybe, if they broke in at the right spot, if certain congresswoman was giving the location out of Nancy Pelosi, that they could have dragged her out, dragged out Mike Pence, all these political enemies on the hit list, that you at the very least stopped the certification, compelling Trump to remain in office, to declare martial law, and then I'll just have to stay president until all this is sorted out. And it's not really all that melodramatic to say, to threaten and probably end the democratic process of this country. Because these neo-French revolutionaries were probably not going to go back to the system where they were told and convinced over and over again that there was fraud. That, before the election happened, 6 months before it, Trump was bitching about election fraud, that the only way he could lose is election fraud. Just stir the shit, stir the shit, stir the shit. You get enough people pissed off, get people around those barrels of oil, light the match, light the Zippo. Fortunately, for those who were more organized than everybody else that was involved in that, it's a good thing that the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were surrounded by too many herds of cats in that crowd that were just incited and pissed off to be organized, to clog the aisles, so when those who were actually armed with something or actually had tactical gear on, they're too busy with too many assholes in front of them to actually be effective. Despite the 3 hours that Trump did not call for the National Guard. But even in this, there is a Republican politician, I believe in Ohio, that wants to make January 6th a Remembrance Day, a holiday to remember those brave patriots that broke into the Capitol. And that is the malfunction of the Republican Party. And the tragedy of how many people bought it and are continuing to buy it. And all the responsible people, all the good-natured, responsible people, those good-natured Republicans with their own family values, their own set of values that I'll disagree with, but they're still good and reasonable people, they have to go along with it. Because ultimately the sad part is, what was once the fringe that politicians only paid attention to at the Iowa caucus, they are now the base. And all these conservative Republicans, these reasonable Republicans, they are now the vocal minority. No matter how many they are, we won't hear any. They'll be far quieter than all these other folks, because Lord knows we wouldn't want to be seen as a rhino now, would we? Given one of those, given Eric's little video that got banned off of Twitter and Facebook, of him in tactical gear with a bunch of cops busting into a house of a rhino, gonna hunt down them rhinos. Or hunt down those people who were responsible enough to oppose Trump. That's all I got for this. You want to have a little discussion of what both sides are? Yeah, you're right. Both sides are fucked up in their own way. In their own way. But this day and age, the question that I asked at the onset of this in my Facebook group on Middle America from my Republican friends in that group as to what are you looking forward to if you get your way and your Republicans win, what policies do you want them to champion and to push forward and to pass, because they would be able to. And I got no answer for that. None of them answered that. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just as long as they win, as long as they beat them libs, doesn't care what happens afterwards. Let Trump win again. Let Trump be president forever. And then when Trump is dead, after his lifetime term of office is done, then let the kids have their go. Because, a democratic republic, all those rules from the Constitution, they're so inconvenient. Isn't it more liberating to live under a despotic autocrat? You don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about things like debates. You don't have to worry about things like opposition. I mean, you can have those elections, those show elections where your leader will win 87% of the vote. But, democracy, representative republic, so inconvenient. It's getting in the way of our fun. Isn't this fun? Well, isn't it?